thank you for this chance to be here and speak to this group on behalf of a dear friend, Denise Adams. I can't tell you how honored I am to be at this wonderful celebration and reception. I call it a true celebration because you know her for the last 10 years, but I was asked to provide information about the previous 10 years. So what I will tell you is all true. I'll tell you nothing but the truth, but I won't tell you all the whole truth. So here's a few questions to start you off. Truth or fiction? She has a Bachelor of Nursing degree. Originally trained in OBGYN.
True.
Is an avid gardener. Is a closet hematologist. Trick questions. I told you I was going to tell you the truth. They're all true. So the story begins when a few years ago, Dr. Adams began her college career at the esteemed Georgetown University, this idyllic setting in Washington, D.C. It's been the place of many, many famous persons. And Denise spent a total of 10 years at Georgetown University with college, postgraduate work, and medical school. For any sports fans, at that time, this was a great heyday of Georgetown basketball. Patrick Ewing, the Hoyas were among the national leader. Who else knows a famous alumnus of Georgetown University?
Hey, there you
You
go.
learned everything you needed for Hangover 2 at Georgetown University. That wonderful Jesuit school of training. After medical school, we heard that she moved to Burlington, Vermont. Wonderful medical center, one of the few days of the year where it wasn't snowbound. But you can see that this is where she did her OBGYN training, that followed quickly for the benefit of all of us in pediatrics, and completed her pediatric residency there. At that point, we were oh so lucky to have her come to the fellowship at Duke. Now, it didn't take her 7 years to do her fellowship. I know it may appear that way, but she was there at Duke a total of 7 years, between 1993 and 2000. And you'll hear a little bit about her fellowship because this was where I met her and had the opportunity to work with her. And I can tell you without any hesitation that we were all better for every interaction that we had with Denise. So she trained with two great leaders, an oncologist, John Folletta, who was referred to as the Kahuna, and Thomas Kinney, the hematologist, who was referred to as Scary Man. And these persons helped train and mold her into both a hematologist and oncologist. John Folletta was delighted to offer some thoughts, Denise. I remember Denise as a highly skilled and compassionate physician whose equanimity was exceeded by no one. She was stubborn when she needed to be and was right for far more often than she was wrong. Chris, are we talking about the right person? Later in her stay, I learned she was a gardener, and a special one at that. I enjoyed working with her and benefited greatly from her calm, steady approach to everything she did. Please congratulate her for receiving this wonderful honor, and do give her a hug for me. So this is the first of at least 7 hugs that I am due to give you at the end of this. A nice tribute from John Folletta, who spent 20 years as a division chief at Duke in pediatric hematology oncology, and then the last 16 years as the head of the IRB at Duke University Medical Center. Now, many of you know about her clinical skills, but what you also may not know is that she was very active in a camp called Camp Kaleidoscope, and she's in there somewhere, smiling as usual. What you may not know, besides the fingers, was that she had a special role at the camp called Madame Sarducci. And Madame Sarducci, full wig, full veil, probably had a basketball or something covered with tinfoil where she would read the future of everyone. And as I'm told, one of her best was when she found the snake in the toilet, and this was a special time for her. And we're used to Denise shouldering the load of everyone, but here's a perfect example of it, that yes, indeed, even when she's on the bottom, she's always smiling, always smiling. I went through a lot of photos to try to find pictures of Denise not smiling, and they're just not there. She is outstanding. but I found one picture where Denise wasn't smiling. And it was with me. Here I am pontificating or blathering on about some red cell enzyme or something, and look at that face that she has. Completely unimpressed. Here we are in the clinic.
No, I was scared to death.
There I am. So I did have people come to me a little more because my nickname wasn't Scary Man, but that tie is pretty scary, and I don't know. But everybody loved Denise during the first year. She was clinically so impressive, and we started talking about the lab. And I tell you, she mentioned over and over, well, you know, I've done previous clinical research. I said, well, okay, that's good. Well, you know, I've published. Well, okay. So in the interest of this being a family event, I won't tell you about her previous research, but I think she remembers. But you can ask her about that on your own. But anyway, Denise did join the lab, and she was a terrific companion. Thad Howard, who was our senior supervisor, had many glowing things to say about Denise, and remembered that basically she was unflappable. Nothing seemed to disturb her, no matter how many times things weren't working. At least to us, she was never moved. She had complete self-control. Now, she was also pregnant with Keenan at the time, and I remember, where's Keenan, that she would come in pregnant, working on things, and we were worried that after she delivered that she would bring him in, and I do remember her doing some work in the lab, rolling the stroller back and forth while she was doing that. Fortunately, no radioactive experiments, at least I think not. But Denise was a terrific lab citizen. She worked on T lymphocytes. She was doing, at the time, very cutting-edge work, assessing the clonality of T cells, what we call the B-beta repertoire, measuring cytokine levels, and she really made terrific contributions, even though she was clinically oriented. And here are some of her publications. Now, to the rest of the fellows, here's some news for you, that while you're in the lab, you can still be very productive on the clinical spectrum. And Denise wanted to have opportunities to review our experience with certain sickle cell complications and 3 first author publications, and this convinced me that you are, in fact, a hematologist, even if you're now hiding it a little bit. I know where your roots are. But Denise was an outstanding clinical researcher. Now, in case you wonder whether her credentials are real, this is an actual photocopy of Denise Martin Adams, MD, completing her fellowship in 1996, and at this point, she became faculty. Now here, her reach was even greater, because no longer was she just working with her other fellows, but now she had an opportunity to teach new fellows. And when I reached out to them and told them about this celebration for her, I was overwhelmed, really, at the number of responses and how many wonderful comments came back. So from your fellow fellows, Dr. Adams, you recognize their faces around Crystal Sanchez-Bottom, Sherry Bailiff, Matt Heaney, Sharon Castellino, Chuck Hemingway, Theodore Siacalpa, C.K. Strickland, Janet Casey, and Steve Nelson. Congratulations, more hugs that I owe you several times over. A leader among our group, that's a high praise for fellows to say. A great teacher, role model to the junior fellows, always laughing and smiling, except with me. Compassionate with patients, and appreciated by families. All of the things that we know about you, your colleagues remember this. But 2 had something special to say. So here's Sherry Zimmerman. And when I asked her to recollect, I'll let you read it, but she remembered a trip that you took with her to American Academy of Pediatrics, PAS, in Washington, D.C., and at least in Sherry's mind, it was the first time that either of you had given a talk. She knows it was the first time for her. And what she remembers was me grilling you about keeping it high quality, making sure you had eye contact, making sure you didn't own your way through it. So you stayed in a bed and breakfast, and before I got there, you practiced over and over using a plant for a podium and a hairbrush for a pointer. And what was so funny to me was you mentioned that last night at dinner, and I couldn't have made it up, and there it was. And she remembers that you'd be serious, and then laughing, and then you had a flat tire on the way home. Quite a trip. So Sherry also wants to make sure that you get the proper adoration and hugs for coming a long way from using a hairbrush as a microphone to an endowed chair in vascular malformations. Now, the next person, this is a mixed story, Stuart Winter. So I have to tell you, there was a little love-hate here between Stuart Winter and Denise Adams, because Stuart was the first fellow in my lab, and he was a guy's guy, and when Denise came in, he left her a package called the Survival Kit in the Ware Lab, and she was very excited to get this. It was in a drawer, and it was How to Survive. And I remember you came to me somewhat disappointed, because what he had left for you was a bottle of Whiteout and a bottle of Motrin, and this was supposed to be your survival kit. But here's what Stuart actually did for you. What comes to mind right away was our mutual exchange feelings of freedom and guilt. I was always telling Denise not to worry if the experiment did not work out okay. It could always be done again. She would worry about the time, the cost, the frustration that came along with controls, and so on. So Stuart saw himself as a senior mentor to you, trying to help you. What did he get in return? In return, Denise would notice little things that I had not done for her. For instance, not cleaning up the glassware in the sink as well as she could have. And did you not say that last night as well? Stuart was so messy. Invariably, she would bring these things to my attention. I was initially surprised and a little embarrassed that anyone would notice, but I always corrected the mistake. That's not the end of the story. One day, he actually did it right, and you noticed him really cleaning the glassware extra well. And you said to him, "You know what this is, right?" And he said, "No, tell me." "This is Catholic guilt." To which Stuart said, "Oh my God, this is toxic." You said, "Yep, and it's yours forever." So that's the recollection that he has, Mama Adams. Now, you might wonder where she developed her interest in vascular malformations.